Hi, I'm William,
And I'm Kat,
and this is Info on the Go.
answering questions you want to know.
So, Kat, what are we talking about today?
So, we are talking about the history of period products. Have you ever stopped to think what women used during that time of the month throughout history? If so, you're in luck. The history of sanitary period or menstruation products.
I
It looks like
can't wait to dive into this one.
earliest records show women about 3000 BCE to 3000 BCE, or the Stone Age, used rudimentary pads made of leather and linen wrapped in moss and sand. The moss doesn't necessarily sound too bad. A little strange, I'll admit, but the sand, you got me. No, you got me effed up there. Okay, absolutely not.
Well, I'm thinking that the sand has to be inside the moss, and the
Maybe.
sand would act like an absorbent, maybe.
Right, right.
But
Maybe.
we should do one on paper and toilet paper because moss has played a huge role in a lot of different stuff. But yeah, the sand, I'm not a female, but yeah, that didn't even sound comfortable at all.
No, I'm not about it. I'm not about it.
Ancient Egypt, from about 30 BC to 332 BC, used reusable loin cloths and tampon-like devices made of papyrus and grass. And I tried to look up to see what this looks like. And I think it was just cloths rolled around the grass and the papyrus, and it acted as an absorbent.
That still doesn't sound too comfy. I don't know. Ugh. I mean, it's not. None of it's really comfortable. You know what I mean? But that just sounds like bamboo shoots under my fingernails.
Oh my gosh, that hurts. I just felt that.
It's just to me, that's just what it sounds like. But all right. So, and then ancient Greece, about 1200 BC, Hippocrates noted women would wrap lint around wood. Also, would use rags to catch the blood. They would use this blood as part of ceremonies and rituals during the spring festivals. They would spread the period blood on the earth to increase fertility. Mm,
Yeah, that
don't you just
people
want to
back then did
just
things that were just, I don't know,
it's unhinged?
sketchy.
God, just oof. I mean, the nitrogen would help or whatever, the decaying, what have you.
Well,
It does help
think
with crops, but I just
I think at the time they were more looking at it as celebrating life because, after I don't think there was a lot known about how the cycle worked. And I think
no.
they thought of, this was a way that, actually periods led into bloodletting. And kind of, I guess that's where that idea came from, that it rejuvenates. Um, so,
Well, in certain instances, like there's oh, I can't remember what it's now. Hemochromatosis, I believe. I could be wrong, but that's where you have too many red blood cells, too many iron,
oh,
uh,
yes, yes,
too
that,
much iron in your blood or whatever. And so, I mean, bloodletting would essentially help with that. But I mean, there
yeah,
are some things that make sense with, and then other things not so much.
sounds like another episode.
Right, right, exactly.
In Africa, around these times, women would use grass mats and rolled up grass to absorb the blood. The Middle Ages is also known as the Dark Ages,
The most unhinged age in history.
for sure, um, for sure. It was a period in history that lasted from around 500 AD to 1500 AD. It was during this time that periods became more shameful to talk about. Period products of this era reflects that. It was religious beliefs and misunderstanding of menstrual cycles that influenced the shameful nature. It
Yeah.
was
It
you
goes
want
from this goes from like let's spread it all over the crops to let's not ever talk about it. It doesn't happen.
yes, that's just it doesn't happen. We're done with it.
We don't know what that is.
Or it can shoot vapors from your eyes.
Right. Right.
Uh,
It
It
was
will.
believed that menstrual blood could kill crops and give someone the ability to shoot vapors from their eyes. Yeah, this it could kill crops now at this point. At first it was fertility, and now it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. During this time, women would use powder made of dried toad around their waist. That sounds gross. Just bleh.
There
This
was a lot of weird stuff. That was one of the weirdest things that I found when I was doing the research for this, which is
dried
why I included,
toad.
yeah, because it was just like, what? It was so off the rails.
There's not much in the medieval times that
No,
isn't off the rails.
for sure, for sure. Isn't
This
that when the
is
Salem witch trials happened?
yes.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
God, the guillotine. Okay, the many medieval inventions. Oof. The torture. We could talk about the different types of torture in the medieval times in different countries that they had,
Oh,
but it was all different.
the torture devices, that sounds like a good show.
Yes, yes. All right. So that was one of the many impractical solutions was the dried toad around their waist. I'm not sure how that helped. I'm not sure who even came up with that idea, but
Uh,
who knows?
yeah. The
Uh,
modern ages from the 15th to the 19th century. By the way, the modern ages, not so modern.
mm-mm.
In the late 19th century, 1879, around about 1879, the idea of women bleeding into their clothes and then wearing the same clothes for 4 to 8 days was considered disgusting and unhealthy.
Can you imagine how long? Like, oof. Ugh,
Four
ugh,
to eight days?
how long did it take the folks to figure out that that is just disgusting and unhealthy? Like, how many years did they just let women walk around smelling like that? I just,
Well, just think
mm-mm.
about like the sanitary part of it. Like,
Ugh,
uh, yeah,
gross.
mm.
Ugh. There's no other reactions I have for that. Like, there are
Oh.
no other words. Ugh. Uh,
You done got me all messed up here.
it was around this time that doctors concern grew for sorry, it was around this time that doctors concern grew for infection from unsanitary conditions. Well, okay, I read that wrong. My brain and
No,
dyslexia here.
you're fine. You're fine.
It was around this time that doctors concerned for infection from unsanitary conditions grew. There we go. I got it that time. Thus, the Hoosier Sanitary Belt, a belt that pinned to washable cloth pads, was born. These were the popular choice for most women from the late 1800s to the 1920s. And if you're able to look that up at all, um, it's definitely a sight to see. But if you're not able to look it up right now, the best description I have is a mix between like a loincloth and a thong with some suspenders because
Yeah, yeah,
it's
that
wild.
that is almost perfect description of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I looked it up when I was doing the research and I was like, what?
Yep.
It
Hmm.
was so weird. While it is believed that sea sponges were used for centuries by ancient women, they were discreetly marketed to women in the late 19th century. Think about what I just said, discreetly marketed. Like you just couldn't go into your drugstore and pick them up.
Or
You had to
your
actually go in.
apothecary or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, apothecary, I guess back then for sure. You had to discreetly ask for these products in the 19th century.
Probably the same people you went for a backward abortion.
Uh, oh wow,
Sorry.
you know. They were marketed discreetly to women in the late 19th century as an alternative to the foul-smelling washable napkins that were used at the time. Sea sponges were placed in a net with a string to allow easier insertion and removal from the vagina. I'm assuming that's kind of like a tampon without the little hard piece
The
on it.
applicator.
Okay, is that what that's called? The applicator?
Yes, it would be called an applicator. Yes. But yeah, no, I don't see oof a sea sponge. Mm, mm. I don't know how that I don't know how that worked very well. It sounds messy to say the
Uh,
least.
Yeah, I don't think it worked too well because they kept innovating, right?
For sure. We don't still use these sponges, so there's that.
Uh,
They did not require the same amount of vigorous cleaning as the napkins did, and were easily cleaned and rendered reusable after being boiled in hot water for 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, that's pretty much how you sanitize anything, just saying. So
for
there's that.
sure.
At least that was on there. Okay. Oof.
The first absorbent disposable sanitary pads were the result of nurses seeking a new method to stop bleeding on the battleground during World War One. The first sanitary pads were made from wood pulp bandages known as cotton.
I would think so.
Yeah, that's what cotton. Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
That's all
that
I
fr
got.
that French nurses found in hospitals. The bandages were extremely absorbent and affordable. Even were okay. The bandages were extremely absorbent and affordable enough to throw away instead of washing and reusing them again. Wow, that was a mouthful for me, right?
In 1896, Johnson and Johnson jumped in on this and created their own version called Lister's Towel, sanitary towels for ladies. These were used in combination with Lister's belts, to which the sanitary towels were attached.
And
However,
the Lister's belt is the same thing as the other belt
Hoosier,
that we talked about earlier, just in case you were wondering,
Johnson and Johnson's got to put their own name on everything.
for
Yeah,
sure.
that hasn't changed. However, advertising was thought inappropriate and women were uncomfortable asking for the product in stores, and the product failed. Sanitary pads were still available in store for women to purchase, but they were frightfully expensive, and most women opted for the washable and traditional homemade version. I would too, especially if it was still shameful to talk about, and you go in and maybe have people laugh at you or tell your neighbor like so and so came in to buy this, blah blah blah.
Could you imagine doing that today in an apothecary or a drugstore? Like the HIPAA laws would just
Oh,
prohibit,
I was just thinking like Hippo would have a field day.
especially for the workers there, like we should that HIPAA is a whole nother episode for sure.
Yes, yes.
Um, while homemade tampon devices were around in the late 1920s, fax tampons were one of the first commercially marketed tampons. And I tried to look up a ad for this and I couldn't find one.
Dang.
Uh, Made from absorbent material that was wrapped in gauze, these tampons had no applicator and no string.
Good
Good
luck,
luck with that.
everybody else. I was just never get it back out again. Oh man, do you know how embarrassing that would be to go to the doctors and like I can't find it. I know it's there, but I can't find it.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't. The things that women have had to go through in history is just.
I mean, to be fair, that still happens with tampons nowadays that do have a string, but without a string, I can only imagine how frightfully annoying that would be.
Yes, I can imagine with that.
Oh, let's see. Where were we?
Fax
Oh,
tampons. I'll go from here. Fax tampons were disposable and more sanitary, but complaints of leakage were the number one issue among women. And Kotex recognized this concern and used it to advertise their new leak-free product.
by this
Leakage
time,
leakage-free product.
leakage free. Leak free. I mean,
Yeah,
leakage. It's all the same. By this time, advertising menstrual products was more acceptable by mainstream communities. Well, it would have to be. I mean, everybody does it. Women make up more than half the population. So, yeah,
for sure.
hello. Women became more comfortable with the idea of asking for and purchasing sanitary napkins after they were advertised in popular catalogs. Well, if who you idealize can ask for it, you can too. While the new disposable tampons were innovative, they were still very expensive. Most women during this era opted for the cheaper sanitary apron. These were made of a thick black material, or sorry, a thick material, usually dark red or black in color. Man, this dyslexia is getting me today. and worn under a skirt or dress to act as a protective barrier from staining clothes. Yeah. Did it have like a panty option or something? I'm wondering how it didn't just dribble down into people's shoes at this point. It's just an apron. Is it like a skirt?
Well, my guess is that it kind of folded up underneath, um, like like it would cover the buttocks area. That way, when you sat down, it would just catch it.
Maybe.
That's
Maybe.
kind of what I was thinking. I tried to look up one of these aprons, but I did find a vintage Kotex ad. And if you get time, I'm not going to read the ad, but if you get time, definitely go in and do a Google search on that for sure, because there's some interesting verbiage on that for sure.
I can only imagine. Oh, goodness.
All right.
Patented in 1929, the modern tampon with applicator by Dr. C. Haas. Look at somebody decided to be like, "Hey, we need to get a way for these ladies to retrieve this."
Seriously. In 1939, Hess had finished the design and creation and patented the tampon. And here's a fun fact. Tampax, he derived it from tampon plus vaginal pack equals Tampax. Who knew, right?
I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That's ingenious.
Hmm.
Thus, the first tampon with an applicator hit the market. In 1937, the menstrual cup was patented. The cup was made from latex rubber with the aim of allowing women to wear slim, tight-fitting clothes and draw comfort from knowing that there were no belts or pads showing. However, during the Second World War, the shortage of latex rubber forced the production of companies to stop production. And so the cup is debatable if it was invented then or later on. There was this device, and I'm going to try to describe it, and I didn't include it in the research because uh, historians and archaeologists alike are not sure if it was a cup for menstruating or if it was a Planned Parenthood device, but it was this wooden hollowed out wooden thing that would be inserted, and they weren't sure if it was one of the other. But either way it goes, that doesn't even sound comfortable in any scenario.
Mm-mm. No,
I'll
not
let
at
you
all.
pick up with the 1950s.
So 1950, OB released its tampon without applicator. 1970 saw the rise of pads with adhesive backs to help stick to women's underwear. Well, yeah, that it really is helpful. So they don't go anywhere because oof. During the 90s, the release of innovative absorbent gels, which were built into sanitary pads, were a breakthrough in both comfort and hygiene. This was also marketed as an alternative to tampon use, aimed at reducing the number of toxic shock syndrome cases in women, which hit an all time high during the 80s as a result of super absorbent tampon use. Well, science is funny that way. Like, this is disgusting. Let's do this. Oh, this is causing issues. What's going on? Trial and error, trial and error. You're not supposed to wear a tampon for longer than 8 hours because of the risk of toxic shock syndrome. But I can only imagine how long it actually took them to find that out.
You know, and I didn't include this, so I just looked it up, and I'm just going to give a brief definition of what toxic shock syndrome is. It's a sudden and potentially life-threatening illness. A toxic shock syndrome, TSS, as we'll refer to it from on, occurs as a result of an infection with, oh my gosh, bacteria. It's a group of bacteria. Um,
Hmm.
the bacteria infection results in the production of a known as TSS. Overgrowth of the bacteria in the bloodstream leads to the release of the poisonous toxin in the body, making a TSS infection a potentially fatal condition.
Yeah, it could become a septic infection very fast. And when you become septic, everything starts shutting down, and it's just a matter of time at that point. And
Wow.
with it still being, it's still even not really widely comfortable for people to talk about. I mean, it's more so now than it was then, but in the 80s and 90s, like, no, that was definitely not a fun topic. And for me, like, just idealizing the 80s and 90s, everything was about fun or happy things, I guess, for the most part, aside from like the drug scares and maybe AIDS.
Yeah, I never even heard of it until I started doing the research for this and then started talking to you a little bit about it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I think it's something that should be talked about, especially with the younger generation, because, to your point, when you're young, it's all about fun and it's all about on the go. But I think education has to be a part of it, right?
Yes. Yes.
And which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was to educate myself. Just for those of you who know, I actually picked this.
Hmm.
Um, so this innovation was also strategically marketed as a safer alternative to tampons, particular, particularly in light of the toxic shock syndrome (TSS) concerns that had peaked in the 80s. TSS, a rare but life-threatening bacterial infection, was strongly associated with the use of highly absorbent
High
tampons.
absorbency.
Yeah, high absorbency tampons. The scare prompted significant public health awareness, regulatory changes, and a shift in consumer preferences.
Sanitary pads with absorbent gels emerged as a solution for women seeking effective menstrual management without the perceived risks of tampons. This period not only highlighted advancements in product design, but also reflected changing attitudes toward menstrual health with an emphasis on safety, convenience, and choice.
You know,
So,
I don't think we're still at a point where it's extremely comfortable talking about it, especially with people in my generation. I grew up in the early 80s, late 70s. For me, it wasn't something that I'm okay with talking about. But having two daughters and a wife, it's something that does come up occasionally in my house, right?
I believe it. I believe it. I see
Um,
I got two girls myself and I don't have to deal with that just yet. I'm not exactly ready to handle that task, but
well, for me, my youngest one is through that cycle, and again, I think education is key to it, and talking about it, just being able to talk about it. Like, I thought this was going to be difficult for me to do, especially with you. But it turns out we had, yeah, there was some things in here that were kind of sketchy, but I actually had fun doing this. So,
it's kind of enlightening, honestly. And I was like, you want to do period protection? Okay. All right.
yeah, I can remember your first initial reaction for sure.
It was definitely, I wouldn't say off-putting. That's not the word I'm looking for. It was
But haven't you ever wondered?
I have actually. I have wondered where we got to pads and tampons and stuff like that, but I would have never pictured it came out of sand. It all started with sand.
Back in the beginning of time, it was something that was highly talked about. It was something that was natural, and then somehow or another, somewhere down the line, we got into uh, it's it's not okay to talk about. Now we need to get back into, hey, we need to talk about it, educate. Um,
I'm not saying we need to go spread it all over the crops or anything like that,
no, I agree. I agree.
but
I still think we got a ways to go with women's health or just health in general, but definitely women's health, right?
yes, definitely. I mean, if and we have a long way to go when it comes to just women's health and equality when it comes to getting checked out or going to the doctor or anything like that. We also have a hard time where uh, there's lots of women that have a hard time getting diagnosed with what's called PCOS or endometriosis or anything that has to do with the reproductive organs or the uterus or anything like that. You have to be very, very very persistent on getting a diagnosis for those things just to get treatment for them. And they can be very painful and even life-threatening.
We should definitely do one on healthcare
Yes.
or women's health, maybe.
Mm.
Anyway, that is, with that being said, that is going to conclude this show. We are a brand new podcast. We ask that you follow us on Facebook at Info on the Go. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a review. Who knows? We might read it. Kat might read it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would love to hear what you're thinking. Leave us show ideas or just get to know the host.
Yeah. Ask us questions. We'll do our best to answer them. That's really all I got. We'll figure it out as we go.
All right. Perfect.